Professor Eric Osibe, I indicated earlier, and Acho also corroborated to that on the Bank of Ghana's website, if you log on to the Bank of Ghana's website right now, you would see projections from January just to June, which is the first half of the year, and which gives you 78% of GDP ratio. Now, it also gives you a total debt of 393.4 billion. Looking at this projection, is it a reasonable projection?
Well, it could be yes, it could be no, depending on where one is coming from.
I mean, why? All right, so...
the central bank is...
Okay, so we seem to be having a terrible connection with Professor Eric Osibe.
That brings direct costs or debt servicing costs to government, where government has to pay on yearly basis. Hello?
Prof, you're on PM Express. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Prof, I can hear you loudly. Let's try and fix Professor Eric Osibe.
Can you hear me?
Let's try and fix this line. There's a connection problem there. Let me bring in Dr. Theo Acheampong. He's a political risk analyst. To those who say it's an alarmist projection, what's the reality on the ground?
I don't think it is an alarmist projection. Like Kesel said, for anyone who's been paying close attention to the numbers and looking at the trajectory of where our debt has been going in recent years, you could actually almost get to the point of getting between 95 and 100% debt to GDP. The thing, though, is that you have to look at how it's treated within the different sort of accounting identities. So typically what we have sometimes done is that when we're computing the total public debt, of course, we add the external and the domestic, but we don't fully account for the debt that is owed by the state-owned enterprises and some of the off-balance sheet transactions and things like that. And that had actually been a major issue that the IMF had flagged in some of our programs that we've engaged in, including in the last one that we just exited. And we even had a challenge with this above the line and below the line reporting. So if you look at what the World Bank does, and on page 35 of that report, they state, and I'd like to quote this one here, that the debt is expected to jump in Ghana to 104.6% of GDP from 76.6% a year earlier. And they give three reasons for this. One, they say that there's going to be a widening government deficit. Number two, the massive weakening of the cedi. We're talking in excess of 40% depreciation year to date. And then number three, rising debt servicing cost as what is driving these numbers. And I would like to sort of pick the first one on the government deficit. The finance minister went to parliament a few months ago with the mid-year budget. The government said they were going to be doing 7-point-something% deficit by the end of the year. But as of half year, we had already done in excess of 6, right? That then leaves you a gap of about 1.5 or 1% thereabouts. And what that then means really is that you have to do major cuts to your expenditure in order to be able to meet that original 7.6%. But as we speak currently, if you look at the fiscal projections and the numbers coming through, we are way above or beyond those numbers that have been brought or raised by the finance minister a few months ago. So I don't think it's an alarmist projection. In fact, in any case, we do have the IMF in town now, which is doing the debt sustainability analysis, and that's going to feed into the program design. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the final DSA that the IMF does, we would end up with similar debt, stock and debt to GDP numbers, because they would include a number of the things that typically would not include in our debt accounting treatment, including those off-balance sheet transactions, and then the exposure at the exposure on the state-owned enterprises side of things. And just a quick point here before maybe I hand over. The IMF would only lend if they are sure that a country's debt is sustainable. And they have a statement on their website, which I'd like to quote here again. And it says that, quote, for those countries that have unsustainable debt, the IMF is precluded from lending unless the member takes steps to restore debt sustainability, which includes debt restructuring. And to determine whether your debt is sustainable or not, there are 4 bands that they typically would do in the DSA analysis. You're either classified as being low risk, moderate risk, high risk, or in debt distress. And as of last year, when that DSA was done in July, we were already classified as being at high risk of both external and overall debt distress. So given where we are now with the extra deficit and the extra spending, I personally won't be surprised if we move up into the next category of already being in debt distress, which then means that we would have to fundamentally commence a debt restructuring exercise before accessing the IMF financing.